Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, Timothy. Welcome, Ellen. Welcome, Twee. Hi, Scott. How's it going? I'm AC from Halt the Harm Network. Thanks so much for being here. We're just going to let a few more people join, but feel free to settle in. And if you'd like to put your video screen on and say hello in the chat as people are joining, we'd love to see your faces if that's something that you can do at the moment. If not, you're welcome to just, join by listening. So you might see the stream alive as another participant. I just want to let you know that it's an app that we're using as a magic map. So it's not an actual person, it's just like a technology that we're using. So just if anybody was wondering about that. So my name's AC and I'm with the Halt the Harm Network, and I'm thrilled to be co-hosting this event tonight with Tamala Trussell, the founder of Move Past Plastic. And just to start out, I'd love to see where folks are calling in from. And as folks are joining, they can add this to the chat too. So before I introduce Tamala, I'm going to share my screen and it's going to show the Stream Alive Magic Map. And as folks add to the chat the name of their city and state, you'll be able to see on the magic map where people are coming in from. So let me just go to the Stream Alive. And then if folks can add into the chat what city and state they're calling in from right now, and I'll start to put it into the map. So Tamala, if you want to type in where you're from into the chat, and Ellen, if you want to type into the chat where you're calling in from. Let's see. Oh, we got a dot coming in. I'm going to zoom in a little bit since we're mostly in North America rather than the whole world. Timothy's from South Carolina. Tamala's from Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Ellen, you're calling in from San Dimas, California. And I'm in Central New York. I'm sharing screen, so I can't add it into the chat at the moment, but I'm calling in from Central New York. So we've got folks from different spots. It's really cool to see. So if folks are just joining, feel free to add the name of the city and state to the chat and it'll populate the map. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
See,
Awesome.
where do I go to admit people? There's 3 in the waiting room.
Okay, I'll do that right now. All right.
And if you can tell me, I can help out with that.
If you go into the participants tab and click participants, then a little pop-up will appear and you can hit admit all. Thanks.
Okay, great, thanks.
So folks who are just joining, if you wanted to write the name of the city and state that you're joining from into the chat, we'll be able to see where folks are calling in from on this magic map from Stream Live, which is a really cool visuals. We've got folks from Pennsylvania and South Carolina, Los Angeles, and I'm in New York. And thanks so much for being here, everybody. So I'm going to stop share pretty soon here. Oh, Scott from Gettysburg, PA. Awesome, Scott. Thank you. All right. So without further ado, I guess we can get started, Tamala. It's cool to see where folks are joining from, but I'd love to introduce you and thank you for putting on this presentation to ensure safe drinking water. I'm really excited to get into the meat of the presentation. So basically a quick flow of the event. We're gonna have Tamala introduce herself and then she'll share a presentation. And then if folks have questions, you can add them into the chat, and I'm gonna be keeping track of all the questions in the chat. And we'll have about 5 minutes to ask Tamala some questions from the presentation. And then she has some more toolkits and maps that she's been working on to share with everybody. And then we'll have a few more questions. We'll have another opportunity for a few more questions. So Tamala, would you like to start off by just sharing a brief introduction about yourself? And
yeah, sure.
Awesome.
I am going to go ahead and start off with sharing the screen here. And let's see. All right. All right, so everyone is seeing the first slide of where you're supposed to be. And
Yes.
so first off, I just want to give a big thank you to Halt the Harm Network. We've been partnering for over 2 years, and I really appreciate them helping to host this presentation. They are just one of many partners, as you can see, that Move Past Plastic works with, and to address single-use plastic and their impacts of the entire life cycle. And one thing that I really want you guys to keep in the front of your mind is that in order to protect our drinking water, we need to understand that plastic isn't just a litter problem, and that it's not even just a micro and nanoplastic problem. And it does a lot more than choke, strangle, and starve marine animals. All these things are true, but in fact, less than 1% of all plastic that has been created is in the ocean. So where does that mean the rest of it is? It's on land, and it's impacting you directly in your communities. So plastic is also profoundly a huge chemical problem. So microplastics, nanoplastics, the chemicals that they are make them up, they are in our water cycle, and it's raining plastic and chemicals on us on a daily basis. So moving forward, I want to kind of share with you about this stream that I came across back in 2019. And it was impaired by a legacy landfill. And this stream represents one of many streams across the country, and especially here in PA, where we have the second most streams in our watersheds. And this primary tributary drains into the Conneaguinnet Creek, which provides drinking water for over 20 municipalities. Now, since I started Move Past Plastic in June of 21, I began to acquire massive amounts of information on the entire life cycle, from fracking to disposal of plastics. And then I very quickly realized that it is the keystone issue, meaning it's related to everything from health harms, climate change, social injustice, and so many other things. But one thing that I did around the time, that same summer that I started Move Past Plastic, is I got a stand-up paddleboard. And this stand-up paddleboard was the most magical thing I ever created. I call it my, I feel like I'm Queen Cleopatra on the Nile, going down the Conneaguinnet Creek here. And I've invited numerous people who I've become great friends with, as you can see in the pictures on the right, and had opportunity to have community paddles as well. And everybody has fallen in love with the Conneaguinnet Creek. And I think that's the biggest thing to realize, is that my creek, you know, is in my watershed, but all of you have a watershed. And it's important to understand that what we do with our watershed impacts it, and it provides for us. And moving forward, you will be hearing about some concerning information, but I want you to understand great things are being done about the things that I'll be talking about by many, many organizations, businesses, communities, and individuals. And there's a lot of positive action that's being taken, and we're preparing to take, and you can be a part of the solution for these problems. Remember that what happens locally will drive the systematic change at a broader level, all the way up and including the Global Plastic Treaty. So without further ado, what you see here on this screen is that many hazardous chemicals are created by the industries such as Bass, Bayer, Dow, ExxonMobil, and many others. And it equates to 30,000 pounds of chemicals per US citizen. Now, there are over 350,000 chemicals that are registered. Only a fraction of them have ever been tested for safety. In the US, we have this, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the right word. We have a system where the industry self-reports if a chemical is hazardous. That does not happen. So for example, scientists said that lead was toxic back in the the first decade in the 1900s. But it took how long before we regulated it, asbestos, and a plethora of other chemicals as hazardous substances. So the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine got together not so many months ago, and they decided that there's so much information that we don't know about the hazardous chemicals. Maybe, you know, this one or that one, but definitely there's not studies being done about their toxicity altogether. And there's not a lot of studies being done on those that are most impacted, fetuses, infants, and children. And so many chemicals are being created that it equates to 1 new registered chemical every 1.4 seconds. Whoop. So there's 10 to 20,000 different hazardous chemicals that are in every single piece of plastic. And the 2,400 of them are substances of concern, meaning that they are bioaccumulate, they're persistent, and they have toxicity. Now, out of those 2,400, the EU has identified, the ETZ Zurich has identified 900 of those hazardous chemicals that are used in the EU, the US, and Japan on food. Food packaging. Excuse me. So all these chemicals have caused us to surpass the planetary boundary of safety. And what that means is that the Earth does not have the ability for these novel entities, they're called, meaning the plastics and the man-made chemicals. The Earth does not have the capacity to absorb, dilute, or break down. So out of those 2,400 chemicals, only 144 have been designated as hazardous. So PFAS, which we're going to talk a lot about today, and it's a primary focus for our chemical of the plethora, it is not considered a hazardous chemical. Now, some states have deemed it and have set maximum contamination levels, and the EPA is working on it. We'll get to that in a minute. If you look at this graph, you'll see chemical production going up exponentially, and the plastic chemical production is following suit. So it's most all the new chemicals that are being produced to create plastic. This is fossil fuels plan B, to create plastic to be able to continue to frack and drill. and into the future, because they know that we're having EV cars, energy efficient homes, and so they want a place for their product and a reason to keep producing. A single cracker plant in Beaver County, Pennsylvania takes 1,000 new frac wells in order to provide the feedstock to create the nurdles, which are plastic pellets that become the feedstock for all the plastic products. So over by 1934, plastic production is due to double, and most of that will be in packaging, single use. Some of the adverse health effects for plastics include various cancers: liver, testicular, prostate, brain cancer, cardiovascular disease, erectile dysfunction and infertility, early onset puberty, diabetes, obesity, and attention deficit disorders such as autism. Whoops. PVC and PEX piping contain some hazardous chemicals, and they've just been recently in the news. So this is considered the most toxic plastic that's created. And shockingly, your drinking water is running through it. So vinyl chloride, phthalates, lead, other heavy metals, benzene, toluene, and volatile organic compounds are just a few of the potentially hazardous chemicals that leach from PVC and PEX piping. There's about 5 main different types of PEX and untold different amounts of PVC. Once again, every manufacturer and how it's made, it's going to be different, and how they put it together and build it. So even if you do come across an article that has tested one set of pipes for toxicity leaching into the water, doesn't mean that that's representative of all the PVC and PEX out there, because they're all made different and they all are under different circumstances, whether deep in the ground and different temperatures and heat and weathering, or in your house, or there's lots of factors is what I'm trying to say. Okay. All right, moving on to PFAS. PFAS is known as the forever chemical. It is made with a carbon and fluorine bond, the strongest bond that chemistry can create. And because of this, it does not break down in our environment. It was created to resist heat, oil, and water back during World War II. Like most, I think I've heard a statistic somewhere, do not quote me, but that it was something like 90% of all technology and science that's, you know, advancements come out of war. This is one of them. But anyway, just I thought I was always shocked by that, but makes sense. But PFAS, because of these strong bonds, they are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. They bioaccumulate throughout our food chain, and they're persistent. They get in our groundwater and our air, our soil, and they've been produced since World War II, hence they're ubiquitous everywhere. So moving on to explore where we can come across possible contaminants. That's one of the biggest things that I'm going to be sharing with you, is how you can figure out how you could possibly be getting PFAS contamination, and how you can try and avoid or eliminate that potential harm in your lives. So as you can see, it's heavily used in oil and gas. Think about it. They're drilling miles into the ground, you know, heat, oil, and water. Okay, so the whole thing, including their pipelines, the refineries, and everything, all the way to the cracker plants and to disposal. And you can see that the plastics and the resins are the top 5 uses for PFAS. The reason why is they arguably have anywhere between 6,000 and 12,000 different types of per and poly-fluoroalkyl substances, depending on how you classify them. But what they're used for and why they're on virtually every piece of plastic that's created is because when you push the plastic resin through the extrusion process and molding process, they don't want their machinery to gunk up. So they coat it with PFAS. So even if PFAS is not intentionally added to a plastic or packaging, it's present just through the manufacturing of the product. Another place that you can find PFAS being used is aqueous film foaming foam, or AFFF. And these Colorado firefighters are initiating their new recruits with aqueous film foaming foam full of PFAS. And they're in a lawsuit now because of different cancers and illnesses because of this initiation. Just real quick to back up, you will find military bases and airports very, very high in PFAS, and it's because of the use of this foam. In your daily life, where are you going to find PFAS contamination? You will find it in your textiles. You will find it in your makeup. It's been found in baby socks, lipstick, waterproof mascara, your glasses, your dental floss, fishing line, printer's ink, your phone screen, computer chips, anything electronic, right? Heat. So just think, hey, what gets hot needs to be protected from heat, water, and oil. That's where you'll find PFAS. There is allowed to be 2,000 parts per trillion of PFAS in plastic packaging. So let's go over what is a part per trillion, because that's just, I don't even know, like what that means. Well, what that means is take a grain of salt, crush it, take some of that salt, throw it in an Olympic-sized swimming pool full of water. That much is a part per trillion, and that much can be toxic to human and wildlife health. You can also find PFAS in tires, and these tires are getting ground up all over our country and being put down in all kinds of surfaces. From when I went to get mulch, it's used as mulch for your yards. It's used for playgrounds. It's used for the artificial turf, the poured in place, and tire crumb, and a bunch of things. And this is probably, I don't know, comparable to PVC, is one of the most toxic things out there. It has high levels of lead, mercury, cadmium, and other known carcinogens such as polyhydroaromatic carbons, BHTs, and PFAS as well. So here in my county, we have 2 landfills. So as you can imagine, everything I just showed you has to go somewhere at some point, because we're a disposable society, disposable economy, and all this PFAS laden things go to landfills and to incinerators. From a landfill, the product will break down through being rained on and pressure, and over time it creates leachate, and that gets pumped out, taken to a wastewater treatment plant, processed through there. Then what comes out is a solid from the wastewater treatment plant called biosludge, and then that gets taken to be spread on the land, in particular farm fields. Now, the irony is that when you process the leachate in the wastewater, you actually get more PFAS coming out of it, ending up in that biosolid, than you had coming in. And you also get other chemicals like DDT, which has been banned from the US for decades. We're going to be looking at a lot of maps today, and especially diving into them really deep in part 2 of Ensure Safe Drinking Water. EWG has map for known PFAS contamination and then suspected PFAS contamination. So this is another one of my favorite maps that I really like, and it breaks down the different types of areas that you can find possible contamination. So when we start looking at these maps, especially in part 2, you're going to be able to, by the end of part 2, figure out where you might have your personal PFAS contamination, and to be able to go and try and test it and find out if you have problems and if you have PFAS in your drinking water. So there, like I said, in the oil and gas industry, military bases, airports, landfills, wastewater, biosolids, construction materials, there's a lot in that, and consumer products. This is a modern day tech center that I think they make computer chips. If not, it's something similar to that. And you can see, I'm not saying that this is contaminating PFAS in it or into the residents around it, but it could be possible, right? We don't know what they're doing with that substance, and that area hasn't been tested. I need you to be mindful not only of current airports, current industry, etc., but I need you to be mindful of legacy industry. So go to your local historic society or whatever, find a friend who's lived in your area forever like I did. And come to find out, there were 4 legacy landfills from filled up with 2 legacy industries, Carlisle Tire and Rubber and Maslin Dye, who did carpets. And so those were 2 legacy industries and 4 landfills, one of which is contaminating this creek that is providing drinking water for over 20 communities. So in yellow, you can see the outline of where the landfill was and is. And there's a big slope here. And this is a primary tributary that's running down, and that iron oxidizing bacteria that I called Monera Creek, that's this. And then there's another one off to the left. See, they put the landfill here because it has Ordovician shell, and that's supposed to be quite impervious. But obviously, there's a crack in it because this creek over here doesn't have any contamination, but this one does, going into the Connedaguinet Creek right below. So to recap, you have sources of PFAS coming from the industry and aqueous film foaming foam and chemical producers, which then get used in oil and gas industry, military bases, airports, and on consumer products. All of this ends up getting taken to landfills and incineration, and then in wastewater and biosludge. So this is an image showing you microplastics in our smallest of macroinvertebrates. And there was a study done that showed almost 10,000 parts per trillion in 500 freshwater fish samples, and almost 12,000 parts per trillion in some the Great Lake fish samples. Health risks through animal studies for PFAS only show liver, testicular, pancreatic cancer, liver enlargement, mammary gland tumors, altered breast development, depressed immunotoxicity, which means like you aren't going to be as responsive to your vaccines, including COVID, and it creates high cholesterol. Human studies show similar with increased thyroid disease, blood cholesterol, the vaccine efficacy loss, decreased fertility in women, low infant birth weight, and preeclampsia. It's important to know that the PFAS had the largest epidemiological study done with 69,000 people, with Rob Bidlet's lawsuits against former Chemour, which, former DuPont, which is now Chemour. So unfortunately, PFAS, other chemicals, micro and nanoplastics have crossed the placental barrier, the blood-brain barrier, and you can find them in the fetal heart, brain, lungs, liver, and kidneys. And its first bowel movement after it's born. It's also in breast and bottle-fed milk. So all of this takes a toll on the health of our, the health of our environment, and it takes a toll on our pocketbooks. If you just look at the bottom for two of the plethora of health harms for PFAS only, it's $4 billion per year. So that's just one chemical, two out of many of the health harms it creates. So what are our regulating bodies doing about this hazardous chemical? Well, it used to be 4,000 parts per trillion, and in 2016, they lowered it to 70. But as we've heard, you basically want non-detect. Anything above is not safe. Finally, June of 22, the EPA declared a health advisory, which is a recommendation. It is not an enforceable thing by your local municipal water provider or third-party water provider. They are working on maximum contamination levels. Public comment period ended at the end of May for this. So cross your fingers, and we hope good things come with their regulations that will be set for this. They have a lot of information that you can find out about this, and I need to update my website with all that information, but you can reach out to me for more specifics or just go to the EPA website. States, meanwhile, for a few years have been setting maximum contamination levels. Unfortunately, for both the new EPA health advisory, future maximum contamination levels, and for the states, they're only doing it for, you know, 6, or I think the EPA's is now 8 PFAS out of the up to 12,000. So yes, it's good, but a lot more needs to be done. So remember the bioaccumulation cycle of plastics and the hazardous chemicals. That's, you know, important. Every piece of plastic that's ever been created is still here, and 99% of it is on the land and where you live. So what are people doing about it outside of legislation? If you find it in your community, in a point source area, so one of those points that I was talking about, an oil field, a military base, an airport, industry that's using it, etc. That would be point source, right? So not your entire watershed, but a point. They can clean it up, but it's very expensive, energy intensive, and it collects, doesn't destroy PFAS. Some methods for destruction are out there: bursting and breaking apart the molecules. We're using high pressure cookers, splitting them with UV light, energizing additives and electricity, cold plasma, reactive gas. Other ones are coming up that are using an absorbent plant-based material to gather the PFAS, and then taking sodium hydroxide and another chemical to break the carbon or carboxylic head off of the PFAS, and then use microfungal to break down the rest of the chain. So we'll see what else evolves. One of the things that I'm, hoping that you get out of this presentation and two is that you go to your municipality and find out if they've tested the drinking water for PFAS, and if they have, what are their levels. And the reason why this is important is because the Biden administration has set aside $10 billion for PFAS cleanup and for unregulated contaminants. 29 of the unregulated contaminants are PFAS out of 30. And so your municipality, along with this and many other sources of funding, can get funding for testing, monitoring, and remediating potential PFAS contamination. So just remember that according to even Keymore's own sign, change the formula, because if we regulate these 8 chemicals that EPA is planning on doing, they have a bunch more that are not regulated and they'll continue using, right? Because of this, we need to push, they ban the entire class of PFAS. And first off, they're going to need to define exactly what is a PFAS. That's why, depending on what you're reading, you'll have 6,000 to 12,000. The other thing they need to do is they need to include blood testing and health monitoring, test resources other than drinking water, ban the use of frac fluid as a de-icer, and you can even buy that from your Home Depot in Aquafina. Test and monitor wastewater biosolids before spreading them onto farm fields. Test and monitor landfill leachate before taking it to wastewater, and hold the polluters responsible. Right now, you, the taxpayer, are paying for everything. Philadelphia does have a lawsuit against Keymore because of PFAS in their drinking water. So we can still hold them to account. So Move Past Plastics campaign objectives for the initiatives for ensuring safe drinking water are to educate people about the hazards of PFAS, help municipalities test their drinking and wastewater, share these test results, because the more we can share the test results with scientists and universities in our municipalities and states, we can change legislation, do the right research at the right locations, et cetera, et cetera. And we want to support strong state and federal legislation. Now, how you can help in doing some of that and have a big impact is to support that stronger legislation, as well as the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. And that can include a right to repair law, a bottle bill, extended producer responsibility bills, bills that are trying to address PFAS in packaging and in clothing and other things that you come in contact with. Push for us to join the Basel Convention. There are over 180 other countries that have are part of it. We are not. It's basically something that tries to regulate where and how you can send your waste. So it's interesting, the US is not participating in that because we like to make the waste but not keep it. And then support the UN Global Plastic Treaty. So I would like to open up this time for a few questions and comments before we move on and delve in to the toolkits and then to mapping. AC?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tamala. That was awesome. Really appreciate it. We did have a few questions come up. There's a few questions about PEX and PVC pipes. Someone asked if, so someone asked, didn't PVC used to only be used for wastewater and not for piping? But now it's used for drinking water too. And do you know if they leak PFAS right away, or if it's something that happens more as they degrade over time? Like, are they just coming out of the box leaking PFAS in our water?
Okay, these are great questions. Okay, so whoops, hold on. Did I stop the screen share? Okay, so the first question about the PVC. So yes, the PVC definitely will leach out chemicals, including PFAS and polyvinyl and phthalates, etc., with what's called weathering. So if I take a water bottle, I put water in it, and it sits there for 24 hours, it is actually getting weathered. I take that water and test it. This has happened in one study. With your regular plastic water bottle. It wasn't even the cheap plastic water bottles that people buy in huge amounts. And they found 300 chemicals. They took that same water bottle, washed it, and then tested the water after 24 hours. The water contained over 3,000 chemicals. So weathering of the PEX and the PVC over time in any plastic will start to have more and more chemicals leaching out. Okay, next question. Ooh, it just eluded me. What was it, Casey?
Just we do use them for not just wastewater. We use them for drinking water too, right? Like that's pretty common now.
Yeah, they use them for drinking water. Yep.
Okay, and then we had a couple of questions about the EPA. Did you have any other thoughts on PVC before moving on to that?
No, but you had asked another question before the EPA along with the PVC. What was it?
I think you got them both, if they're used for piping and if they degrade over time or if they come out of the box, just, so I think you answered that. And then regarding the EPA, I was hoping you could speak to why the EPA is so slow to regulate after all of this data and all of these studies that we've had for like 40 years. Like, what's going on? And John asked, where does the nominated EPA chief stand on these nano beads?
Yeah, I can't say for sure, but like usual, it all comes down to money, right? So the American public don't know the real costs of what's happening to them because these are externalized costs that just get like rolled in by a deteriorating infrastructure causing health harms that we have to pay for, etc. Meanwhile, we also subsidize the fossil fuel and petrochemical industries, and then we want our cheap gas, and we're happy because we have cheap gas, not realizing we are already paying for it, and then up front. And then on the back end. So with PFAS, it's the same thing, right? This wonderful product's been made and it's being put on everything and making all kinds of products be sold, and it's just money, and then something about beads. What was the...
John asked if you know how the current EPA chief stands on the nano beads.
Oh, so you mean like the micro beads that were used makeup and stuff? I think those have pretty much been pulled out and regulated.
Okay.
So when we had like little scrubbing beads in our facial things and in our soaps, I think they've pulled those. So
Mhm.
that's regulated, I believe.
Okay, great. And Ellen asked, wouldn't it be very expensive to break down PFAS since the chemical bonds making it up are so strong?
Yes, it absolutely is very expensive and very energy intensive.
John also says that they might have found some bacteria that's able to make these nurdles neutered.
Yeah, so I know that's a thing that's out there, but you have to think that plastic there's over 8.3 billion tons of it made. And, we're producing over a dump load truck a day per minute. And so that has got to be a whole lot of bacteria to break down plastic that's been made since 1930 and doubling and tripling over the next decades. So we'd like to get happy about that, but yeah, no, that's so not the solution. Bacteria is not going to keep up.
Okay. So Don asks, if there are so many different types of PFAS, how do municipalities test for them? Is there a test that can detect multiple different kinds? Is there a link to PFAS testing sources for municipalities? Or are you going to get into that in part 2 of this workshop?
Yes, yes, and yes. So
Okay.
yes, you can test for fluorinated chemicals, which won't identify the specific PFAS compound. And then there are tests for testing 32 and up to 40 PFAS in different situations, which are all outlined in the toolkit. When this program is over, if I'll be sending out a form for you guys to fill out a survey. When you fill out that survey, you will have access to the toolkits that I'll be going over that have absolutely every bit of information that I think you could want or need. And if it doesn't, you'll tell me about it and I will add it.
Awesome. I just dropped the link to the registration page for part 2 of Ensure Safe Drinking Water, the second part to this workshop for folks if they haven't registered for that already. I just wanted to let folks know that I put that in the chat. And we have time for a couple more questions.
I think we should move on, but hold them. And then after
Okay.
the program is done, if people want to stay, I'll be happy to answer these questions for you. But I do have a lot to get through, so I want to get through it before the hour's over. All right.
Okay.
This is a toolkit that is a living document. I added about 6 things to it today alone. You guys are encouraged to give me things to add into it that you think is pertinent. PFAS, everything about it is constantly being updated and changed from testing, what they can test, how they can test, where they can test, what research impacts, you name it, right? It's an evolving thing, legislation, everything. And this toolkit contains it all. So know that this toolkit, we have these presentations every so often, and that's because it is being updated constantly. So there's a table of content, and you should be able to click on this to get to where you want to go. So one of the first things that you'll see are the goals of the toolkit. Yes.
Camilla, would you share a screen again for us?
Oh, no. Okay. We'll go back.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'll back up. So this is the introduction. This is your table of contents. Everything is hyperlinked and footnoted. So it starts off with the goals of the toolkit. I have a little bit of resources for Spanish speakers. I would love if somebody wants to translate this and the other toolkits into Spanish and other languages. That would be fantastic. Just reach out to me. There's very good webinars on PFAS that I've highlighted here for you to learn more about. And then there's a whole big section that we're going to be going over with the other different toolkits. And the PowerPoint presentation is in here. The PowerPoint recording will be in here. And then it moves to legislation. It has federal legislation. So it'll talk about the federal PFAS report card and rules. It has states. What are your states doing? Has a European PFAS map too. That was added. Thought that was good. Has a PFAS cycle. And then it gives us the US known and suspected maps, the European PFAS map, maps for landfills we're going to go over. We're going to go over fracked wells because that's an important place for contamination, oil and gas threat map, earthworks map, which is more oil and gas. EPA, this is kind of an aside, but I think it's really neat resource. EPA has My Environments maps. I just downloaded this one today, Forever Chemicals and Freshwater Fish map. That was just added today. And How's My Waterway by EPA. This is going to be, we're going to really work with this map on part 2, where it will help us understand what a watershed is and how your watershed is working in relationship to the other maps you're going to be cross-referencing, so you can see, hey, here's my contaminations, here's my watershed, this is the way the water flows, and this is what, you know, I should be, you know, looking into. Then we have a whole section on laboratory testing, and I go over the different labs, drinking water testing information, blood tests. If you want, you know, if you are in a place that's, you know, a high toxicity or PFAS, you might want to get your blood tested, and unfortunately, insurance isn't currently covering that. Testing solid waste, leachate in landfills and sludge, home test kits. There are home test kits. Cyclopure is $79, very reasonable because typically it's $400. So there's sources if you have a well that you know you might look for to help for testing your well. I go over that. And then we go over all the different kind of sources of exposure, personal exposure, and things it looks like they've got formatted when I added the other things. I'll have to go back and make this pretty. And then, you know, step-by-step ways you can reduce your risk for exposure. PFAS-free products. I have a whole bunch of wonderful links for where you can find PFAS-free makeup, PFAS-free tints, et cetera, et cetera. At-home drinking water filtration. You need to be looking for an NSFP 473 filters. And I go into the filters and all the different types. Then we have different companies for treatment and the different ways of that they can, you know, treat bigger PFAS contamination. And then some upcoming solutions, the unregulated contaminant rule, CERCLA, and other sources with Astrid and the Solid Waste Association. Federal grants, more information on states, specific information to PA, and Move Past Plastic email and references. So that is a quick overview of that toolkit. I want to just quickly pop over to the other toolkits that this toolkit will connect you to. So this one toolkit will send you to the following toolkits. All right, so the one that it will send you to is once you've identified your possible contamination sources and you want to learn more about those contamination sources, you can go to PFAS talking points, or it's areas of concern. And so once again, I have the Spanish speaking here, and then I do your site map. General talking points are in here, but then general health concerns. Are you pregnant? You'll look here. If you live near a military base, you'll look for more information here. And then you can see here in the left, you've got compost, biosludge, landfill, frack well, industrial site, environmental and watershed. Okay, once again, a living document. If you have something that needs to be in here, because this kit I've worked on, not nearly as much as the other one, share it with me and I will get it into this toolkit. Okay, because once again, constantly new information is being put out there and updated. And especially since I made this toolkit over a year ago, and that's the last time this toolkit's been updated, but it's done some good stuff. A few things I've put in there, but not like on every single topic and subject. I haven't had a chance to do that. Another toolkit to help you if you want to start being active with reaching to your legislators, to the media, writing letters to the editor, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, it's buffering up here. Is we have this media toolkit. So it has how to find your legislators. Once again, it gives you your contamination sites, how to write a letter to an editor. Oops, it's buffering. It has, how to do a social media post, how to write to your legislator, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that one for media. Oh, still buffering. Okay, the one that we're going to go over heavily for part 2 is this one, engaging your municipalities in testing for drinking water. So you will learn to figure out, does your municipality provide your drinking water or a third party? Once you figure that out, then how to go to get them, to ask if they're testing for PFAS, and if they're not, to get them to test. And it has everything step by step of how to do that. So I'm not going to scroll through it since we're having some lagging and some buffering, but it starts with, getting your stakeholders and who are they and how to do that, and has a chart so you can put their name, email. I mean, it's detailed. So we'll be going over that in part 2. The last one is, let's see, hold on. Oh, that's the main one. Okay, so I'm going to put a pause real quick on toolkits. We're going to take 1 or 2 minutes for that. And then I want to flash through the maps super fast. Guys, if you can stick around for a little bit, it'll be worth your while. We will dive into the maps in detail in part 2. Quick question.
Awesome. So just wanted to say you're getting a lot of positive feedback on your toolkits in the chat. Don says, wow, that's a lot of great information and resources. Lisa says, yes, vast amount of useful information, amazing work. And we're just super grateful to you. Timothy says, Tamala is amazing. So I just wanted to make sure you got a chance to see those comments in the chat. There weren't any other questions about the toolkits in particular.
Okay.
So there was another important question that did come up from Julia that I wanted to squeeze in.
Sure.
The EPA is testing the well water of houses in my area because of our proximity to a landfill. And she's located in Lower Providence, PA, near Valley Forge. And the EPA said they're only going to tell the homeowner if there is PFAS in their water, but they are not going to inform the rest of the community if any PFAS is found. So what are the reporting requirements when PFAS are found?
You know, right now, because it's not regulated, there aren't. But you can apply and I can help you. There's I've just made some connections with some people who have lawyers. Yay. But you can that can help us with getting applying for a right to know, and to get the, you know, so that if they're just telling you, oh, you do have PFAS, but they're not telling you the amounts and which ones and everything like that, we can file a right to know and get that. Okay, Tracy?
Thank you.
All right. So whipping through these really amazing maps that you're just going to love is the Safer States map. And then this is an interactive map. I have my area pulled up just in case the screen froze. And so this are the PFAS on a military base that's in my community. And so you can see the total is 37 parts per trillion. So it's not excessive like some military bases that have 2,000, 6,000, right? But it's still not something that I'd like to see. And I did do a 10-minute presentation to my municipality a little over a year ago. They did test and they just emailed me back with another, some other information today. And we do have, you know, PFAS that are right at the threshold of Pennsylvania's current maximum contamination levels, which will go into effect in 2024, which are 14 and 18 for two, PFOA and PFOS. So this map is, let me X out of here. Let me shrink this, see if it kind of looks like this. So it'll show drinking water, military sites, and other known sites. That's for known. And then they have suspected. And so this is this is a map for suspected. And you'll be able to, in this upper right, put your zip code and you can zoom in to get yours. This one here, this map, I really, really like this map. It seems like the information is a little more accessible. And let me see if I can push you guys over. Okay, and you click outside of this. And so once again, just somebody who's living in a contaminated place, throw me your zip code real fast. You can type it in
945.
We got a 29576 from Timothy. 29576.
Okay, so this is what you look like here. So it's looking pretty clean if that's typed in right, 29576. Okay, so we've got, I think that's drinking water there. And we've got some industry and military. Someone want to give me one more?
Feel free to unmute and just say it to Pamela. Okay, Rachel added it to the chat. So how about 80010?
Okay, so this one is populating significantly more. So that's a lot of potential there. The red is industry. You can see in the right, military is green, wastewater is blue, and airports is the darker green. So that's a lot more to be looking at. And so you'll really want to cross-reference it with your watershed maps that we'll get into. Okay, moving on real fast. You've got maps for finding your landfills in your area, maps for finding your biosolids in your area. All of these, you'll be able to just put your zip code. Okay. Maps for ethane. This is my biosolids map. So where they take biosolids and then spread, this will be very important for you to know. Unfortunately, a lot of farmers, even organic farmers, have very PFAS contaminated fields, right? Because the biosolids are getting put there. So here's sites that accept frac waste. So that's really important to know if you live near one of those. And then this is a oil and gas. And once again, in the upper right is typically the place where you'll put in your information. Every single one of these maps, you guys, is in the toolkit. This is the freshwater fish map. And we had contamination. It's not showing up right now. I guess it's buffering, but there's one right around here that they have. And once again, that just because you don't see contamination doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means it hasn't been tested, most likely, right? And then this is a new wildlife contamination map all over the country by EWG. And then we will be diving heavy into this wonderful map, talking about hot 12s and hot 8s and our watershed and drinking water, eating fish, swimming, monitoring, discharges, permitted discharges, all kinds of really, really cool things. This is like, I love this map. This is a great, great map. And there are a couple others that we will be going over, but I do know that we have, we're 5 minutes over our time. So I want to just take a quick pause for those of you who might have to jump off to ask your question before you leave. Those of you who want to stay and ask more questions or take another quick look at any of the things that I showed you, you're welcome to stay on.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Tamala. So I'm going to drop into the chat if folks do have to leave the link to join the Halt the Harm network. If you haven't checked out the network or you're new to what Halt the Harm is, you can check out that link that I just dropped to join the network. It's a community of amazing vetted leaders who are experts in their field or just super passionate organizers and people who are impacted by the oil and gas industry and who are like working hard like Pamela to fight against it. So please check out the Halt the Harm and join if you're not a part of it. And if you wanted to ask any questions to me after, I'll be here as well. And there are about 3 more questions that came up throughout the presentation that I could ask, but if folks have to run, I just wanted to respect folks' time. So maybe we can start with just unmuting briefly and giving Pamela a really warm thank you and round of applause. So if everybody wants to just take a few seconds to unmute and maybe give her a little clap and share any.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamala.
Thanks for all your work.
Thank you. Awesome.
So wonderful.
Yes, excellent. I'm digging in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, again, if anyone has to sign off, we'll see you again next week if you can join same time for the part 2. And then for those folks that are staying, Pamela, are you ready for just a couple more questions?
Absolutely. I'm going to let my cat out right here. 1 second.
Oh, let the cat out. That's important.
Okay, he's out. He's been crying. He's been a good boy.
And then could you stop sharing screen so we can see everybody? You can go to gallery mode if folks want to, go on camera. You're welcome to. But Rachel had a really important question that I would love to hear your thoughts on. PFAS have a function for industry. Do you have any thoughts on alternatives?
Yeah, they really do have a function in industry. Like I said, they're doing very important functions, right? Repelling heat, oil, and water. And I think currently there's not a lot of great replacements for quite a bit of things out there, especially like maybe technology and some other things. But what we can do, there are replacement alternatives for things that are not what we call essential, right? So our food packaging and those baby socks, and I don't need it in my athletic bra in a tent. So what we need to do is start with getting not, things that don't have to have PFAS in them, get them out. There are other alternatives.
Thank you. And then earlier on, Prakash, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, can you comment on the current status of analytical mentors to detect and measure the various forever chemicals?
First of all, let me compliment Tarali. It was a great presentation. I'm an old timer in this field, but following it up, the PFAS herd is coming up and playing a big role in the environment, and it bothers me more than DDT or anything else, because I dealt with the municipal industry. I retired at the head of the R&D for the Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, and I'm particularly concerned about the biosolids, because anything that goes through the water cycle, it has to end up in the wastewater. And the wastewater again goes to, after the treatment, it goes to the discharge, through the discharge channels into freshwater cycle. And then ultimately all these PFAS and other resistant chemicals are concentrated in the biosolids. I'm glad you mentioned about that a few times, because ultimately that's where it all ends up. And I'm concerned where the heck we're going to put it. I mean, if the land is not going to accept it, where does it go? So there's a big concern. And we were touting about the beneficial use of biosolids for a long time. And I'm involved also in the development of the regulations for 503 regulations and Class A sludge product and things like that. But now, even the Class A or exceptional sludge is going to have these kinds of compounds. And the analytical methods are so crude because of the interferences and all that. And we do not know really the exact concentrations with the methods that a few methods only are developed, I think, to my understanding. So this is a very complex issue, and I'm not following it so closely like the rally you are following it up. And I want to gain some knowledge from you if there is any latest on the biosolids. I understand that Maine actually banned the application of biosolids on land, and probably other states also would follow. Then what happens to the biosolids already that are applied on land? Are there reliability issues and this kind of thing, and who's going to be responsible for that? You have any wisdom to throw on in these kinds of subjects?
At this exact moment, there isn't, and everything you said is exactly spot on. That one type of technology that I mentioned, where they're having a medium to collect the PFAS and knock off that carboxylic acid head, and then use, good old nature, basically, right? Microfungal to break down. Something like that is what I'm thinking in my head are going to be the best options for that, point source and potentially other point source pollution. But in general, we have to turn off the PFAS tap. We have to turn off the single-use plastic tap. don't want to demonize all plastic, even though it is all toxic, but if we can just stop using PFAS and disposable plastic, it would help a lot as these technologies are evolving to handle point source pollution exposures, and then maybe they can, do the job of, the microbes, like how microbes break down natural matter. I don't know. That's all I got for you, Prakash. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a complex issue. I'm constantly pondering about that. They ask me the questions. I have some ideas, but I don't know whether I have not explored.
Yeah.
But one thing, I want to walk the talk. So at least I made a small beginning in having a plastic recycling project in India. I come from there originally. I just want to walk the talk. So I'm doing my little part in processing 2 tons of plastic per day, and helping some unemployed youth. That's the latest, because I'm a Rotary. You can see my background is Rotary. So I'm also thinking of how to influence Rotary, because we have a new environmental focus group. We added another field. So I'm seriously thinking about, because most of the people may not even understand this, our membership, is such a new subject. And everybody is environmental these days. We want to grow honeybees and all this kind of stuff, but not this basic problem that we're going to face in the future, particularly, where are you going to put it? You can't put it in air, you can't put it in water, you can't put it in soil. So what's going to happen? So it's a complex issue.
I think right now, the best thing we can do for collection of, our plastics is don't incinerate, don't have chemical recycling and all that stuff. We've got to just unfortunately throw it in landfills for right now, and then hope that we get some technology that can remediate it in those confined areas. And yes, those confined areas are leaching out and making leachate and whatever, but then don't take that to the wastewater treatment plant. That way, maybe if we don't do that, we could collect some biosludge that's not too toxic that we can still spread on our farm fields, right? So we can start with that.
What we did at the district, water reclamation district, way back, when we found heavy metals or high concentrations in biosolids, the best thing, as you suggested earlier in your presentation, is to throttle the faucet. Don't let it in the first place, because these chemicals are always like that. And when the first Teflon was invented, my gosh, I didn't know we didn't have to wash the dishes, that kind of stuff. Look at where we are today. That one. Even Bakelite, when it was first discovered, we thought that is the panacea for a lot of things. And look at where we are. So, the industry, as we blame the industry, I think we are very comfortable. Look at it. On my own desk, I see a lot of plastic here. So what do you do?
I know, right? But it's real important, everybody. As much as this seems like it's just hopeless and we're inundated, and we are. So just know that that's the truth. We can't sugarcoat it, but also know that finally world leaders, organizations from the entire planet have finally, just since I've been working on this in the last 2.5 years, have recognized this and are coming together to do something. And your voice doing things locally in your Rotary clubs, in your churches, and with your local ordinances, local zoning, just if you want to, bring your own, dishes for takeout, or to carry home your leftovers, you've got to find out what your health ordinances are and your local ordinance, are you allowed to do it? And if not, change it. There's things that you can do. And when you start flipping the municipality, and then the county, then the state, then your federal government. And if we can flip our federal government, the rest of the world's already been doing it on it anyway, right? But US is behind. Yeah.
And Amy in the chat and John and Dawn were talking about how it would be smart for the chemical industry to create a plastic that can be broken down to its components and then recycled and reused. And it would save them money and ultimately protect humans and animals. So simultaneously promoting and funding plastic alternatives as done would be another great way to.
Yes. Now let me comment on that real quick, Dawn. You're
Yes.
absolutely right. If they truly created a product that is really backyard compostable, biodegradable, that would be great. I took off of this slide deck and maybe I need to stick it back in there, but they did this, it's called a digital tree, I think. And it's where every chemical has its own like signal and it'll pop up and make these little trees. And so they took this bioplastic that's supposed to be biodegradable and they did its digital, chemical tree, and there were 20,000 chemicals. And guess what? That bioplastic has the same chemicals as petroleum-based plastic because it has the same characteristics. So we just have to be very careful. We do need to hold the producers responsible. That is one true, very big initiative that we need to do. And when we hold them responsible for, the production through end of life, that way we're not on the hook with it, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but I'd say 85% of my trash that I used to think was recyclable is plastic. And so we're paying for it, right? So we're paying for them to frack it, to crack it, to transport it, to refine it, to throw it at us. I opened up a pair of Tai Chi fans. I just have to tell this story, okay? I opened up, I was so excited. I bought bamboo fans and silk, real non-plastic things. And it came wrapped in plastic. Then I undid that. And it came wrapped in the identical plastic. What I'm talking about, that Amazon gray, thick stuff, took it out there. Then it came in bubble wrap, took that off. And then it was in another bubble wrap, took that off. Then it was in a plastic thin sleeve, took that off. It was in another plastic thin sleeve. I was like, oh my God. I got a video. I'm going to post it on my Move Past Plastic. I forgot to do that. But yes, it's like, do we need that? Just if we cut that out right there, imagine.
For real.
Here in Kansas, farmers are being affected by weather changes. And so a lot of farmers who've been doing the same type of farming for decades are having to pivot. And I live in Northeast Kansas, and where we are being inundated by fracking waste, but that's a whole nother can of worms. But I have been thinking about creating a conference to get plastics. We have plastics producers, packaging producers here, Berry Plastics and others, to get them together with farmers and K-State and University of Kansas faculty to see, how we can possibly pivot to sustain, pivot agriculture to meet sustainable packaging needs, just as one example. We have our hands full with dealing with what we've already created, but it sure would be nice to find solutions, viable solutions. And to me, that's, I don't know, I'm an eternal optimist, but so this is what I've been thinking about, in Kansas, how to solve more than one problem.
Yeah, Dawn, that's wonderful. I just came across some literature and legislation I just started up a legislative group just this week, and one of them had sent me some information, in agriculture with plastics and PFAS. So I can gather that up, reach out to me via email, and I can find that and send that to you, because maybe that's something that Kansas legislation can work on employing and doing. And Prakash, same with you. You know, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet or anything, but it looked like it might be pretty promising. So hopefully it'll be a good resource.
You know, Terrell, you know, I think I have this small youth group in India. I want you to excite them in your free time because because I want to make them rich. And I'll tell you, can I, with the permission of the chair, can I tell a little story?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. When I came to this country as a grad student in 1962, I mean, I'm much older than you guys. In 60 years, you're not even born, I'm sure, in this country. And one of my professors came to me and asked me, Prakash, do you have $100 in your pocket? I said, you know, if I had $100 in my pocket, I would not have left India, I said to him, you know. And then I have to send this thing to my wife and 2 babies that I left in India to come to get my PhD. So I know that we believe in waste as resources, because all my life I spent with water and wastewater. And I asked him, why the heck you need this $100 anyway? I said, you know, Prakash, there's a company called Waste Management. It is being incorporated. They're giving a family pack of 100 shares, $1 each. My God, you know, I know if I bought that 100 shares, I would have been 100 million. I would be owning in my pocket. So I want to make these kids rich. I applied for a Rotary grant, which I'm able to get it. And I want them to process 2 tons of dry plastic waste, which they're collecting and sorting out. And, you know, I submitted this proposal to the American Academy of Environmental Engineering and Scientists in a competition on small projects, not with the intention of getting, I'm scared of competing anything, because if I don't win, everybody say, yeah, you didn't win anything. So I didn't want to submit anything, but this competition, I participated in it. It was awarded the grand prize. No money, but maybe they give him a mentor or something. So I want to get these kids excited so that they can, I have this dream of making them rich. You know, you mentioned 14% of plastic is being, I doubt it. I now see numbers over 6 to 14 range, you know. And still India is good in recycling. Some companies are banning actually exporting the plastic. But still, there is a lot of plastic. China actually doesn't want to import anything because they have enough of the plastic waste themselves. So you're right on the track. You are a guru for this, I think. You should be preaching more about this. I love it.
She does preach a lot.
And you too. I like the title. Halt the Harm Network. Wow,
Off the Harm Network. Yes, please do check it out. I'll drop the link one more time if you can grab it before.
May I make
actually,
a request of this great presentation? Is the recording that I can obtain? This whole procedure?
you can. Yes, we can send the recording out and all of the links to the resources that Pamela has put together. And then speaking of resources, Don asked Prakash, is there a link to your research lab?
Yeah.
Do you mind
Yeah,
telling me
sure.
what it is?
There is a, you know, I left the water reclamation 20 years ago exclusively to do charity work in my community here in DuPage County and also in India, the place of my birth. Recently, I went there for 3 months on this plastic initiative, and I broke my hip walking. But anyway, I'm back to normal, and I'm going to get back into action to do these kinds of things. So
Awesome.
it's exciting. I mean, actually, people like you still make me excitable. Great.
Yay. Yeah.
Well, Prakash, what I would love to see happen to make your youth rich and everybody is to come up with those alternatives.
Yes.
You know, they're using fungus and seaweed for a lot of alternatives. So that looks hopeful. And of course, fungus is great for breaking down toxins and everything. So yeah, it'd be great to have them become material scientists, you know, get them into math, get them into chemistry.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I see, they gave me an honorary professorship in a university where I'm doing this project. And maybe, unfortunately, we are 10.5 hours behind them. So when they're sleeping, we're actually working. When we're working, they're sleeping. But the dinner time is a good one because it is early in the morning there, or early in the morning is their time also, early evening, like our time now. So I will send you an email. I got your email ID here. I may request to give a talk to the students, the emerging issues. This is one of the things in my mind, emerging contaminants, because, the curricula, they go away certain syllabus for their academic thing, and they don't talk about current issues because the kids are not exposed to the current issues, they go and do their homework from the books that were prescribed to them, particularly undergraduate and these are the guys in the future.
Yeah.
I hear and excite them and all these days, like World Environment Day, World Water Day, these are the kinds of things I do. And recently, because I'm here, I came back from India. So I gave a presentation like walk the talk, not just don't talk, do something. Like you said, I brought my container, macaroni, pasta. I'm a vegetarian. In my Rotary lunch, I asked him to give that thing in a cardboard box. If the cardboard box has a plastic, I don't know. I brought it home. I didn't want to throw it away. But you said, one of the points you mentioned was don't waste food. If we don't do at our level, how can I preach?
Yeah. Now, but we have to be careful to not guilt people because we are victims of the system. So I think that's really important is even I am still producing plastic or purchasing things with plastic, and plastic is coming in, right? And but yes, I feel horrible about it, but yes, I don't really have an alternative, and unless I really go and live super, super, super simple, which, I could, I guess, but you know what I'm saying? So we have to just take one step at a time and keep building, keep doing more, keep learning more, and don't let guilt or the, severity stunt us from keeping evolving and moving and changing and doing. And I would love to, talk and help any child. One really exciting thing to me is everything that I've learned is I'm going, oh my gosh, plastic can be an entire curriculum because I'm like, oh, it's lipophilic, and it's this, it's like full of chemistry, full of history, full of, theater out of it, and arts and math and science, of course, and tons of writing. Oh my gosh, like what part of curriculum could you not fulfill by tackling plastic? So get the school to just switch to tackling plastic, and everything they do is about that. And they will have the best education. Like I said, learning economics, material science, history, communication, you name it. I could just go on and on. I'm a former science teacher, so.
Yeah, I have a similar background. Because one of the communication department in India, one of the universities, I don't know where they got my name. They asked me to talk to the communication department. So I said, how to communicating. Excuse me. See, we do a lot of work. We don't communicate well to the public. I'm talking about scientists and engineers. I'm glad that I found you. You're doing this. You're a scientist. I do the same thing in my retirement. I focus on everything on my job, and I had great time. So I want to do these projects now, and then propagate our message, what we believed, what we learned in school, in respect to our mentors and things like that I do when I go to India. Tell them I just put a banner there in honor of my mentors. I'm a religious lecturer. And so the kids can follow it. They can revere their mentors, their teachers. I learned from them. So I think we should give it back like that. That's my feeling anyway. So that's what it is. Your name AC, what is what do you call them? AC?
Yeah, I go by AC.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is
Well,
the
thank
other, what are those bottles in the background that you have? They're Ayurvedic medicines or what?
Yeah, they're herbal medicines. I'm an herbalist.
Ayurvedic. It looks like she kept the glass bottles anyway, not on plastic.
They're all glass. Yep.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Well,
you,
thank
Didi, very much. I think I'll take your leave. Terrell and AC, I'll be in
you.
touch with you for more
Yes,
information.
Thank you.
Okay?
So nice to have you, Prakash. Thank you, Timothy.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Speaking
Bye.
of late, Tamala.
Okay, thank you, I see.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Right, recording.